LOVC. I'm in a good mood. I got to see some live music last week. Finally starting to happen again. So I saw this guy, Steve Hackett. Got a signed copy of his new autobiography from the merchandise stand. And I also saw Jethro Tull later in the week. So 2 gigs in 1 week. Pretty good going. Trying to make up for lost time. And while I was at the Steve Hackett gig, I also picked up a copy of his latest album, which is also signed. And it's pretty much the same price as buying a copy off Amazon. So no brainer really to put the money in Steve Hackett's pocket instead and get a signed copy. So he played 2 tracks off this when I saw him, which were both fantastic, and which is what made me go and buy this. And yeah, the 2 tracks he played were Devil's Cathedral and Held in the Shadows, which are the first and second tracks on side 2 of this. And there's some heavy sounding stuff. Devil's Cathedral starts with sort of dramatic church organ and saxophone. And it's a real heavy, dramatic, symphonic prog piece. On the album, Nad Sylvan from the Flower Kings is guest vocalist on that track, and he in fact was vocalist for pretty much the whole night when I saw Steve Howe at the Palladium. And then Held in the Shadows, probably the most commercial track on this album. Big chorus on it, and the verses probably sound the most like what you think of as Hackett era Genesis. There's tons of mellotron and acoustic guitar on there, so they are fantastic tracks. As far as the album goes, the first side is a bit strange. I've played it a couple of times, still can't get my head around it because it sounds like Russian classical music, or at least it does until it sort of segues into what sounds like the overture to a Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. It all goes a bit Lion King for a while, which is kind of odd. So whether I'll warm to that or not, I don't know. But I had read reviews that said this album's a little bit kind of all over the place, and they're not wrong. But sides 2 and 3, fantastic. Some superb guitar playing on this record. Really is. Steve Howe's not lost it in the slightest. And given a choice between seeing Steve Hackett in a small theatre playing as he was the whole of Seconds Out, as well as a selection of material from his solo career, or seeing Genesis on their last Domino tour, going to be Steve Hackett every time. Thoroughly recommend checking him out live. And this album, great album. It's just that first side is a little bit odd, but yeah, perhaps it'll grow on me. The album's on 3 sides, and the 4th side is etched with a Les Paul guitar, which you might just about be able to make out on there. So yeah, it's a decent album. It's nice that Steve Hackett's so prolific these days. He seems to be releasing albums left, right and centre, and touring a fair bit when COVID allows. So what else have we been listening to in the past week or 2? Well, I went back to the source, Genesis, Nursery Crime. Controversial, but it is my favourite Peter Gabriel era Genesis album, possibly because it's the first Peter Gabriel Genesis album I bought, and I love it. Absolutely love it. Can't go wrong. Musical box, Giant Hogweed, Fountain of Salmarsis, superb stuff. Don't need to say much more about this. You're probably all familiar with it. But this copy is particularly special because it's on the original Charisma Pink Scroll label. So, well worth having in the collection. So what else have I been listening to over the past week or two. Well, I picked up an album that I had first seen on the VC, and I think it was Dan over at Dots and Loops who showed it, and he seems to have gone all quiet recently. All his videos have been taken down, and he doesn't seem to be posting anything new, which is a real shame because his presentation style was quirky to say the least, and he had an amazing record collection. And I think it was him who showed this, Nert, and their self-titled album from 1972. They're a Polish band, and this gets described as heavy psych, which I suppose isn't too far off the truth. It's more sort of bluesy, proggy, hard rock, with lots of Hendrix-inspired wah-wah guitar, nods to the Groundhogs on here, I suppose, and even Spooky Tooth, track A5. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the titles. It's very much in the Spooky Tooth mould, so much so they seem to steal the riff from Better By You, Better Than Me. Do a great job of it. But this is a really good album. There are, I suppose, psych touches because there's some sitar on here, which gives a slightly sort of trippy Eastern vibe in parts. And also there's some, what I suppose you can only describe as jazz fusion. The heavy end of it, certainly, but the final track on side 2 features a Polish jazz legend, the trumpeter Thomas Stanko. That's a fantastic track. I mean, there's a track listing. So look that up on YouTube and give that a listen. Really good stuff. There you go. It's on the Musa label. Your typical flimsy, almost paper album sleeve. But you know, it's a Polish original. It's in great condition. And it's a really good album. So if it was Dan who, led me to that, thank you, Dan, and start doing videos again, will you? And this is an album that I've had on CD for a fair while. Didn't really need it on vinyl, but sometimes it just seems appropriate to have music on the format it would have originally come out on, and I don't regret picking this up. This was a Record Store Day release this year. I didn't get it at the time, but managed to pick up a copy at sealed copy at Reckless Records in Soho, and it's Bill Fay's Time of the Last Persecution, and this album is fantastic. I absolutely love this album. Love it. I suppose you'd call it sort of acid loner folk. Sometimes it is rocking with some really sort of twisted guitar on it. Often it's introspective with vocals in that sort of Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Neil Young sort of vein. So in other words, he's a singer who can't really sing, but he has so much character in his voice. You just love it. I love it. I think his voice is amazing because it's got bags of personality. He just sounds so heartfelt when he's singing. First track has all Stax type horns on it, lots of driving electric guitar, and then it's followed by a track which is more introspective and acoustic. There's a lot of piano on here. Bill Fay plays the piano as well as singing. Lots of downer acid folk on here, but it's lots of frenzied electric guitar soloing as well. Absolutely fantastic. So it really takes you all over the place. It's not your traditional singer-songwriter kind of maudlin dirge. This is a really interesting album. Highlights, I suppose, Tell It Like It is a really good track. It almost sounds like a stripped back sort of McCartney track in some ways. And then the title track, Time of the Last Persecution, it features, I think is an uncredited cello on here just to add to the sort of misery of the piece, and has these big string swells on here which sound like the Electric Light Orchestra if they were doing ketamine or something. It is just so dark, and there's some really noisy, cacophonous sort of fret wankery on here as well. Brilliant album. I can't say enough good things about this. Bill's voice might put you off, but like I say, to me, it just adds to it. And this is an absolute classic album, and it has been repressed to such a fantastic level of quality. You know, it's on that Durham label. Sounds pristine. You know, it's flawless vinyl. So give that one a listen. Yeah, you won't regret it. And talking of singers who are an acquired taste, perhaps, I picked this up a week or two ago. This guy Copernicus. His real name is Joseph Smalkowski, and he was a New York street poet, basically. And his music is really just a vehicle for these acerbic, angry rants. And this, again, it's an acquired taste, but I've definitely acquired the taste for it. He makes Jim Morrison sound like Chris Martin because he's just so angry the whole time. But it's just enthralling to listen to. It doesn't get off to a good start, this album. The first track, I Won't Hurt You, it's probably the most recognisable thing as an actual song on here, but it's got horrible 80s synths and production. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. This isn't too great. It sounds like one of the sort of lesser moments on an 80s sort of soundtrack, like something from the Lost Boys or something like that. But that is the only track that is in that sort of style. After that, the musical backing is art rock, it's space rock, it's free jazz, and it seems to exist purely to add weight to Smalkowski's words. It's fantastic. I mean, there are synths on here which create sort of Hawkwind ambience. There's a cacophony of tortured guitars, pulses of sound, piano drifting in and out, which almost seems to have nothing else to do with the music, but just adds this sort of creepy, discordant atmosphere. And occasionally there's a woman's voice comes in as a sort of counterpoint to Smalkowski's howl. But this is a bit special. It really is. I've thoroughly been enjoying listening to this. But like I say, probably an acquired taste. And I think I mentioned Hawkwind since that last little review, and I've been listening to Levitation a fair bit recently. This is a superb album. Normally the copies you find are on blue vinyl. I think that's pretty much the only way it was released when it first came out. This is a Castle Classics reissue on black vinyl. I'd rather have the blue vinyl, to be honest, than original, but this sounds really good. Supposedly, this is, from what I've read, it's the first LP ever to be recorded digitally. And I know that kind of upsets a few vinyl purists, but it sounds fantastic. It's the best production Hawkwind ever had, that's for sure. And everything is crystal clear. So there is nowhere for the musicians to hide, and they really up their game. You know, this is so well played. Makes it probably one of their most accessible albums. It's as much symphonic progressive music as it is space rock. It's got all the synth bleeps and blurps you'd expect from Hawkwind, so you know who you're listening to. But musically, it is a bit special. And of course, this is the album where they had Ginger Baker on drums, and he really kind of pulls them together. It's a very well structured album, and his playing is, as you'd expect, superb on here. Some fantastic guitar playing from Dave Brock and Hugh Lloyd Langton, and bass playing by Harvey Bainbridge. Fantastic, some great grooves on here. It's probably a more considered album than a lot of Hawkwind albums. Sounds like it was well planned out before they went in the studio, rather than just going for some full-on space rock jams. And I love their space rock jams, don't get me wrong, but this is a different take on Hawkwind, and probably quite a good introduction to Hawkwind for anyone who wants to dip their toes in the water. Tracks like Who's Gonna Win the War show off Lloyd Langton's guitar playing. It's absolutely superb. Space Chase has Ginger Baker drumming like a sort of a space rock Buddy Rich or something. It's almost like big band drumming, and it's a bit special. And there's some great acoustic guitar on here, particularly on what's the track? The 5th Second of Forever, which reminds me quite a lot of Blue Oyster Cult, that track, in their sort of spacier moments. I suppose when they had Michael Moorcock writing lyrics for them, it's got the same sort of feel as this. I don't know whether Michael Moorcock had anything to do with this album, but yeah, it's got that sort of feel to it. So, thoroughly recommend that album. Then, something slightly different. This is an album that I could probably have included in my Power Pop video I did a month or two back, and it's Banzai to Z. And this came out in 1975. There's I've heard rumours this is the most expensive album that CBS had ever recorded up until this point. And strangely enough, pretty much as soon as the album was released, they dropped the band. I think tried to split them up and get the main guy to go solo, and he turned down the solo deal and possibly regretted that for the rest of his career. But it's a fantastic album. Strangely enough, being such an expensive production, it sounds shocking. It's sort of muffled and flat, and not a particularly involving production, but you can hear where the money went because there's a lot of orchestration on here, a lot of ambition. But like I say, production doesn't do it justice. Having said that, the material is superb. You got tracks like Listen to the Words, which is very sort of McCartney-esque, a bit like Wings. Rubber Men has a art rock feel to it, so a bit kind of like Crack the Sky, if you're familiar with them. Great band. Or reminds me a bit of XTC. Last Song of Its Kind gives you more McCartneyisms. It's just vocals, acoustic guitar, and a few light orchestral and keyboard touches. And there's a fair bit of sort of quirky inventiveness on here, which sort of reminds of the White Album or 10cc. It's a ton of time changes. So they're dipping their fingers in, certainly art rock, if not prog, but overall it's very much a power pop album, I suppose, with a McCartney, Wings, slight Supertramp vibe in places, bit of Todd Rundgren, The Sparks, that kind of thing. So it's highly recommended. I don't suppose that album art did an awful lot to kind of boost sales, because spending that much money on recording an album, putting it out in that sleeve is not the greatest idea. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. I'm not sure it's ever been re-released rather, because I think I read somewhere that the master tapes have been destroyed or lost, and this happens to be a there you go, a white label promo. Sounds superb. I think the best track is the final track, which is nearly 8 minutes long. It has sort of extended atmospheric intro before sort of McCartneyisms come back in. A lot of proggy time changes, some wild drumming, smoking hot guitar, and a fair bit of Hammond organ. There's sort of mellow orchestral interludes with violins and harp, then a massive crescendo at the end with sort of church pipe organ and an orchestra. So, like I say, they blew the budget there. But if you can get past the sort of flat production, well worth checking out. Then, final one for today is an album that I've not had an awful lot of time to listen to. So I've spun it a couple of times. And it's a band that started out life as Bo Grumpus, who released one sort of mellow sort of psych pop album. Couldn't tell you when, 68, something like that, I think. Don't own that one myself. I've sampled the odd track here and there. But they changed their name to Joliver, Arkansas, and did this home album. And by all accounts, heavied up their sound. I wouldn't describe this as a hard rock album. It's a bit early for that, 1969. Well, some people were dipping their toes in that. But it's certainly harder rocking than Bo Grumpus. Has a bit of a rural vibe to it. There's lots of really upfront bass on this, sort of choppy, funky drumming and hard-edged guitar. And it's well worth a listen. Like I say, I haven't listened to it enough to really get a handle on it. But highlights so far, I suppose, Hatred Sun, last track on the first side. Acoustic guitar, flute and tabla, has a definite Jethro Tull vibe. Who, if I didn't say, was the other band I saw last week. Ian Anderson's sort of latest lineup of Jethro Tull, which bears no relation to any other lineup, but good to hear those songs played again. But back to this. Yeah, it gets described as psychedelic. It's not. Hardly features anything I'd call psychedelic at all. There's plenty of wah-wah guitar, but it's all about sort of heavy guitars, great melodic songs, and songwriting does seem to be really, really good. So I look forward to exploring this one a little further. And it's on Bell Records. Always like that. Bell Records label. So, yeah, that's it for now. That's what I've been listening to for the past couple of weeks. I'll try and do something other than a heavy rotation video with my next one. I've got a few in the pipeline, but it'll take a little bit more planning than these. So please leave your comments below. Always enjoy reading your comments and responding to those. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.